The point of no return Wednesday afternoon arrived with the kind of oppressive heat that made the asphalt shimmer and turned fire escapes into ovens. Marcus sat in the Columbia University admissions office on 116th Street, surrounded by mahogany paneling and framed portraits of distinguished alumni whose faces seemed to judge him from the walls. Mrs. Henderson, the admissions counselor, reviewed his paperwork with practiced efficiency, her manicured nails tapping against the desk as she spoke. "Your scholarship package is quite generous, Mr. Williams," she said, her tone suggesting she found this fact mildly surprising. "Full tuition, room and board, even a stipend for books and supplies. The university has high expectations for scholarship students." Marcus nodded, feeling the weight of those expectations settle on his shoulders, like a physical thing. Through the window behind Mrs. Henderson, he could see students crossing the quad, mostly white, mostly wealthy, moving through their privileged world with the casual confidence of people who'd never had to fight for anything. In 6 weeks, he was supposed to become one of them. "You'll need to submit your housing preference form by next week," Mrs. Henderson continued, sliding a packet across the desk. "I'd recommend one of the newer dormitories. They're more suitable for students from diverse backgrounds." The phrase hung in the air between them, polite code for what she really meant. Marcus took the packet without comment, his mind already back in the Bronx, where Miguel was counting down hours until tomorrow night's heroin delivery, where Tommy was probably at Sal's gym, working out his anger on a heavy bag, where Ray was somewhere gathering intelligence that might already be too late to matter. "Mr. Williams?" Mrs. Henderson's voice pulled him back. "Did you hear my question?" "Sorry, ma'am. Could you repeat it?" She smiled thinly. "I asked if you're excited about joining the Columbia community." Marcus looked at her perfectly coiffed hair, her expensive suit, her office that probably cost more to furnish than his mother made in a year, and felt something cold settle in his chest. "Yes, ma'am," he lied. "Very excited." The subway ride back to the Bronx took 40 minutes. Enough time for Marcus to review the plan he'd been drafting in his notebook. They had less than 24 hours until Miguel's delivery, which meant less than 24 hours to figure out how to document Diego's operation without getting anyone killed. Ray had confirmed the warehouse location through Carmen, Hunts Point, near the fish market, an industrial area that would be mostly deserted at night. Carlos would be with Miguel, which meant at least 2 of Diego's crew would be present, probably more. Marcus sketched out the warehouse district from memory, marking possible observation points, escape routes, places where they could position themselves to photograph or record the transaction. But every scenario he imagined ended the same way, with them exposed, with Diego discovering their interference, with Miguel paying the price for their attempt to save him. The train screeched into the 163rd Street station, and Marcus emerged into the familiar chaos of his neighborhood. A group of kids had pried open a hydrant, and water cascaded into the street while they shrieked and danced through the spray. An old woman sat on a folding chair outside her building, fanning herself with a church bulletin. 2 men played dominoes on an overturned crate, their game punctuated by sharp slaps of tiles and bursts of Spanish. Marcus found Tommy and Ray at their usual spot behind Sal's diner, where the afternoon shade offered some relief from the heat. Tommy was doing pull-ups on a rusty bar someone had welded between 2 fire escapes years ago, his white t-shirt dark with sweat. Ray sat on an overturned milk crate, reviewing a hand-drawn map spread across his knees. "How was the ivory tower?" Tommy asked between reps, his voice tight with exertion. Marcus ignored the barb. "What do we have?" Ray looked up from his map. Carmen came through with more details. "The meeting's set for 10 p.m. tomorrow. Diego's bringing Miguel and Carlos, plus at least 2 other guys for security. The supplier's coming from Manhattan with his own crew, probably 3 or 4 people. That's 8 to 10 bodies total." "Weapons?" Marcus asked. Ray nodded grimly. "Carmen says Diego never does business without being armed. We have to assume everyone there will be carrying." Tommy dropped from the bar, breathing hard. "So we're talking about following Miguel into a warehouse full of armed drug dealers to take pictures that might not even be clear enough to use as evidence. That about sum it up? You got a better idea?" Marcus shot back. Tommy grabbed a towel and wiped his face. Yeah, we grabbed Miguel before the meet, physically stop him from going. Hide him somewhere until Diego cools off. Diego won't cool off, Ray said quietly. He'll go after Miguel's family, his mother, his little sister Rosa, and then he'll come after us. The three of them stood in silence, each contemplating the impossible mathematics of their situation. Every solution led to violence. Every path forward seemed to guarantee someone getting hurt. There's something else, Ray said, his voice careful. Carmen told me Diego's been asking questions about her lately. Where she goes, who she talks to. She thinks he might suspect she's been helping us. Marcus felt his stomach drop. Is she safe? For now. But after tomorrow, Ray trailed off, letting the implications hang in the air. Tommy kicked at a loose piece of concrete, sending it skittering across the alley. This is insane. We're kids playing at being heroes, and we're going to get someone killed. We're not kids anymore, Marcus said, surprised by the hardness in his own voice. Miguel stopped being a kid the moment he shook Diego's hand. We all did. The truth of it settled over them like the oppressive heat. They had crossed some invisible threshold, left behind whatever remained of their childhood innocence. The neighborhood had been preparing them for this moment their entire lives, teaching them through 1,000 small lessons that survival sometimes required impossible choices. I've been thinking about the warehouse layout, Ray said, returning to his map. There's a building across the street, abandoned factory, 4 stories. If we can get to the roof, we'd have a clear line of sight through the warehouse windows. Tommy's dad has that old Polaroid camera from the plant. If we can get shots of Diego with the drugs, with the money, with faces we can identify. Then what? Tommy interrupted. We go to the cops? The same cops who shake down my old man for protection money? The same cops who look the other way when Diego's crew beat someone bloody on the corner? Marcus had been wrestling with the same question. The police were not saviors in their neighborhood. At best, they were indifferent, at worst, actively corrupt. But there had to be someone, some authority that could intervene. Not the local precinct, Marcus said slowly, an idea forming. But what about the feds? DEA, FBI, someone who doesn't have ties to Diego's operation. Ray looked skeptical. And we just walk into a federal building with some Polaroids and they believe us? Take down a major drug operation based on the word of 3 kids from the Bronx? They would if we had enough evidence, Marcus insisted. If we can document the meet tomorrow, get clear photos, maybe record audio if we can get close enough. If we get close enough, we're dead, Tommy said flatly. Diego's not stupid. He'll have people watching for exactly this kind of thing. They argued through the afternoon, refining and discarding plans, each scenario collapsing under the weight of its own risks. By the time the sun began its descent, painting the buildings in shades of orange and red, they had settled on a basic framework. Ray would approach the warehouse from the south, where a cluster of parked delivery trucks would provide cover. Tommy would position himself on the factory roof across the street with the camera. Marcus would stay mobile, watching for police or unexpected arrivals, ready to warn the others if something went wrong. It was a terrible plan, full of holes, and dependent on luck they probably didn't have. But it was the only plan they had. As they prepared to split up, Marcus grabbed Ray's arm. We need to talk to Miguel. Tonight. He needs to know what we're planning. Ray shook his head. Carlos has been following him everywhere. We can't get close without Diego finding out. Then we make it look like an accident, a chance meeting, Tommy snorted. Diego's too smart for that. Maybe, Marcus admitted. But Miguel deserves to know we haven't given up on him. They found Miguel 2 hours later at the basketball court on 163rd Street, shooting free throws while Carlos watched from the bleachers, a cigarette dangling from his lips. Miguel's form was mechanical, each shot following the same precise arc, the ball swishing through the net with metronomic regularity. He looked thinner than he had a week ago, his face drawn and shadowed despite the evening light. Marcus approached the fence, keeping his movements casual, his hands visible. Carlos noticed immediately, straightening on the bleachers, his hand moving toward his waistband. But he didn't stand, didn't interfere, just watched with predatory attention. Miguel, Marcus called through the chain link. Got a minute? Miguel caught the ball mid-bounce, held it against his hip. For a long moment, he just stared at Marcus, and in his eyes, Marcus saw something that made his chest tighten. Not anger or resentment, but a kind of resigned acceptance, as if Miguel had already mourned their friendship and moved on. "Nothing to talk about," Miguel said finally. "Tomorrow night." "I know what tomorrow night is." Miguel's voice was flat, empty of emotion. "You should stay away from it, all of you. We're not leaving you alone in this." Miguel laughed, a harsh sound that had nothing to do with humor. "You think you're helping? You think whatever you're planning is going to make a difference?" He moved closer to the fence, close enough that Marcus could see the dark circles under his eyes, the tension in his jaw. "Go to Colombia, Marcus. Forget about me. Forget about all of this. I can't do that." "You can. You will." Miguel's voice dropped lower, urgently. "Diego knows something's up. He's been asking questions, watching everyone more carefully. Whatever you're thinking about doing tomorrow, don't. He'll kill you. He'll kill all of you, and then he'll kill me for bringing you into it." Behind Miguel, Carlos stood up, flicked his cigarette onto the court. The message was clear. Time's up. Marcus pressed his face closer to the fence, desperate to make Miguel understand. "We have a plan. We can get evidence, go to the feds, get you out." "There is no out." Miguel's composure cracked, raw emotion breaking through. "Don't you get it? I'm already dead, Marcus. I died the moment I shook Diego's hand. The only question now is whether I take you with me." He turned away before Marcus could respond, dribbling the ball once, twice, and launching it toward the basket. It hit the rim and bounced away, the first shot Marcus had ever seen him miss. Carlos walked Miguel toward the court exit, one hand resting on Miguel's shoulder in a gesture that could have been friendly if you didn't know better. As they passed through the gate, Miguel looked back once, and in that glance, Marcus read everything his friend couldn't say. Goodbye, I'm sorry, save yourself. Tommy and Ray emerged from where they'd been watching at a distance. None of them spoke as they watched Miguel and Carlos disappear down the street, swallowed by the gathering darkness. "He's right, you know," Tommy said quietly. "This is suicide." Marcus pulled out his notebook, flipped to the page where he'd sketched the warehouse district. "Then we better make sure we survive it." They spent the rest of the evening finalizing details, synchronizing watches, reviewing signals and contingencies. Ray would arrive at Hunts Point by 9:30, giving himself time to scout the location and find the best observation point. Tommy would approach from the opposite direction at 9:45, using the cover of darkness to reach the factory roof. Marcus would position himself 2 blocks away with a clear view of the main approach, ready to intercept any unexpected arrivals or warn the others if police showed up. The plan required precision, luck, and a dozen things going right that could easily go wrong. But as Marcus walked home through streets that suddenly felt foreign and threatening, he couldn't see any other choice. Miguel was drowning, and they were his only lifeline, no matter how frayed that line might be. His mother was asleep when he arrived, still in her nurse's uniform, collapsed on the couch with the television playing softly. Marcus covered her with a blanket, then went to his room and pulled out the acceptance letter he'd been carrying for weeks. He read it again in the dim light from the street, trying to feel the excitement and pride that should have accompanied such an achievement. Instead, all he felt was the weight of tomorrow night pressing down on him like a physical force. In 24 hours, everything would change. Either they would succeed in documenting Diego's operation and find a way to free Miguel, or they would fail and face consequences none of them might survive. Marcus lay in bed, listening to the familiar symphony of his neighborhood. Sirens and music, arguments and laughter, the endless pulse of life in the Bronx. Somewhere out there, Miguel was lying awake too, counting down the hours until he crossed a line from which there would be no return. Somewhere, Diego Santos was planning his heroin transaction, confident in his control, unaware that 3 kids from the neighborhood were preparing to challenge him. And somewhere, in an abandoned warehouse in Hunts Point, tomorrow night's violence was already taking shape, waiting for them all to arrive and play their parts in a drama that could only end one way. Marcus closed his eyes and tried to sleep, but all he could see was Miguel's face at the basketball court, already mourning friendships that weren't quite dead yet. All he could hear was his own promise, whispered into the darkness. I'm not leaving you behind. Not tomorrow. Not ever. Even if he had to die keeping that promise. Even if they all did.